Hi everyone and welcome to our session today. So today we want to cover a bit more Albert, the AI agent, and how you can use it within MyRapidi. I have touched this topic a bit last week. So now we are going to try Albert, see how it responds and what kind of help he can provide us with. Here, the agenda is, of course, what is Albert, how to use it, what Albert can do, of course. Then we'll have a live walkthrough. So I will show you a few examples. Of course, you can also try it out. When you need help with anything, for example, then you can do that. And then you can actually evaluate, how Albert responds to you and whether he has helped you or not. Then we have another section called What's Next for Albert. So we are still adding new functionalities, questions, upcoming sessions, and resources. Now, just briefly going through what Albert is. So it's the AI assistant within MyRapidi. Anyone who logs into Rapidi will have access to it. The difference is that he has access to a lot of documentation around connections, around transfers, and he can help you troubleshoot with any type of error that you encounter. So the idea is that Albert is not just like a generic chatbot. He is specialized on all these areas. And of course, Albert can do many other different things. So you don't need to install anything. You just go into your service, open the chat, and you start writing like what you need from Albert. You can communicate in any language. I think I mentioned this last time. So if you are more comfortable writing in let's say German, Spanish, you can do that, and then he will respond accordingly. So that's also really useful because then there will not be any kind of language barrier between you and Albert. And then, of course, if you tell him your name and then your time zone, he will be able to remember those details moving forward. So then he will start actually having more context about you and will be able to be more and more precise when responding to your questions. So this was about Albert, of course, just a very small introduction. So how to use it. So you just open the chat and then you start writing, anything. So if you need help with an error message, you copy paste the error message in there and then Albert will respond. If you go through his response and you think you need more, you can continue the conversation until you resolve that issue. And of course, every conversation will be saved in the chat history. So every new chat that you create will basically be a conversation that you have with Albert. So that will be saved, and then you can always go back to it if you need to, right? So you can always see what has been discussed and how Albert replied to you. And you can revisit those conversations, or any other team members will be able to do so. Then when it comes to discussing with Albert, you'll have real-time streaming, meaning that he will respond in real time and he will try to help with what you have asked. So he will be able to tell you what he can do, what he cannot do. So he will, for example, if you're asking for something very specific, he will be able to do that. If he still needs more information, he will ask for that information. So there will be this conversation that you would have with Albert so that he can do what you want him to do. So it's really important to actually try it out and see how he resolves any error messages, see how he sets up, for example, new connections, because then you can also check what he has done. Of course, whenever we are using AI to actually set up things like new transfers, new connections, or new schedules, we also have to verify afterwards to make sure that everything is correct. So, with any AI, you do have to verify afterwards to ensure that there's really, the work has been done correctly. Of course, if things are missing after your verification, you can also ask Albert to make changes or update that specific setup. And then he has persistent memory, so he will be able to remember your preferences or specific context, and you don't need to re-explain over and over again, right, when it comes to your setup and the things that you need to do. So that's also really important, because then you don't start from scratch every time and having to explain the issues or what you have set up in MyRapidi. So mainly when it comes to Albert, you can just use, like I said, use the chat and then have a conversation with him and try to provide him with the information that's required. But of course, if you just start the chat with let's say minimum information, Albert will ask you questions about other things that are required. So you do get this guidance from him when you're trying to set up something, or like connections, or maybe transfers. So that's definitely helpful for you. And then in the end, you would be able to get the necessary help from Albert. Now, when it comes to Albert, we want to just look at it and how Albert is doing things. I will let me share here my screen. I will copy this one. Okay, so this is my service. And then, as I mentioned, we have here Albert. And here we can see the chats. So I've had, let's say, a few conversations with Albert. And then after the conversation is done, you'll still see the chats here. So you can always access them and see what has been discussed. And while you are having this conversation with Albert, the chat title will be updated, more like a summary of what you have discussed with him. That way, you will be able to remember what the conversation was about, and then you will be able to retrieve any other information from it. Now, if we go to chat here and we start a new conversation, right, it will load the chat. So it's automatically adding this information. So now we just want to, ask him something. So we can ask him, what can you do for me? So we'll see, and then Albert will respond and will give his answer, right? So then he would say, okay, I can do the following for you. So I can manage, troubleshoot connections to external systems. I can create, configure. So dealing with transfers, he can handle schedules. Then investigating errors, which is really important, because sometimes we get error messages that are not very clear. So then you do need some sort of guidance, from him. Then providing documentation, instructions, how to use certain features, managing the AI memories, sending error reports and notifications, and many other things related to MyRapidi. So, and then of course, at the end, he will ask you questions and see if you want to continue with this part or not, right? So then if you want to know about the specific task or question, we have to provide that information. Otherwise, we just, ask the questions that we need to ask. Now, in the same chat, you can ask different questions. They don't have to be like into the same category. For example, if I say, can you test connection? I'll just ask him to do that. For example, just a question asking him to do that and see if he's able. Okay, so then he responds saying, okay, this was successful. The system was able to connect. And obviously afterwards, if you need him to do something else, then he will do it. Now, he has performed this action, so then we do want to check that this has happened, right? So then what we want to do is go to, we want to go to logs and see exactly if he has done that. So I will go to logs, this one. So as you can see it here, so he has performed this action. So he went to that connection, clicked on test, and then this information has been recorded under logs. So it's something that you would see under logs, like any changes, right? Or maybe running transfers, you would see that information here. Now, if we go back to Albert, what does this error mean? We'll just ask him about an error message that I had. So this is an example, like many of the errors that we usually see when sending data back and forth. So we want to see what Albert says, right? So I have copy pasted the error message that I'm getting. So then he now will explain what this means. So this indicates a duplicate error, right? So all the actions, and then in summary, you cannot create a duplicate account, and you have to use the existing. And then we can say, okay, we can say, please suggest ways to handle duplicates. And then we can continue this conversation with him, right? So then you have here different options. So as you can see, he will say, okay, for you to set up this integration properly and make sure that you don't have duplicates or this type of error, then this is what you can use. And as you can see, the chat is pretty comprehensive in the sense that it gives you many options, right? So you can definitely use external IDs. This is an example. You can implement maybe duplicate detection logic before you sync. You can have like a data cleanup that you can do. So there are many different suggestions that he provides. And even though, let's say, maybe all these options, maybe those, are not for you, but at least it gives you a direction. So it tells you, okay, these are the possible ways to deal with it. So then it gives you an idea about, how this part should be handled. So this is again an example where Albert can guide you through the setup and can explain like important integration rules, like the duplicate handling being one of them. So you get the explanations that you need so that you can update your setup, or maybe you can start using external IDs if you haven't already. So many other things that can be implemented, and this can be, as you can see, can be done via Albert. And then, of course, he will continue with the a question, because, of course, he wants to see if you want to work on anything specific or anything like that. And then, of course, as soon as you're done with this chat and you think you are good, you can say, okay, no. We can just say, no, thank you, I'm good. So we can say that. And then he will be able to, of course, he will respond and say, if you need assistance, feel free to reach out. So now we had this conversation with him, and you see the chat is saved here, and then the other chats are right below, and then you can see the date and time when you have created this chat and you have discussed with Albert. Now, Albert can do many other things, like he mentioned here on top, right? So then if you need a reminder of what he can do, you can simply ask him. You can say, okay, can you help with this part, right? And then he will be able to say, yes, I can do this, or no, I cannot do it because, for example, you need to provide Albert with certain information, or you maybe he needs, your input on specific things. So it's just a conversation that you have anyway with him, and then you can understand, what he can do, and, how much he can help you with, during your current setup. Now, for example, if I say, okay, we'll just say all my schedules, for example. This is just one example. So he will go through that, and then we should be able to see them. Okay, so here we have my schedule. So of course, when you open the chat, you can ask Albert anything about, about transfers, schedules. If you want to get a list of specific transfers that are in a specific status, you can do that, and then he will drop here the list. If you want to see specific schedules or maybe something else, then he will be able to add here the list. In my case, then he just retrieved the schedules information, so I can see exactly what I have, for example. Or another part that's very useful is to get, transfers. Let's say we can see, can you list transfers? Let's see, transfers that have the status testing, for example. Can also do that just as an idea and see how it retrieves all the information from this service. So he's going to upload here the list. Okay, and then I should be able to see which are those transfers. So I will see the transfer code here, and then the description of that specific transfer. So these are the ones that I have in testing, and I can just copy paste it if I want to, or I can have a good overview of what I have set up. So any kind of information, you can actually use Albert to get that list, or maybe to get some sort of statistics, I would say, around transfer schedules, right, or groups, for example. So you can definitely do that and use it properly. Of course, you can continue the conversation and ask any other things, and he will be able to respond. Now, the thing is that, of course, there might be situations where he responds right to the point, so it will give you the perfect answer. So then you will understand 100% what he's referring to. And also maybe there will be situations when he will give you more like a partial response, or maybe it's not like 100% what you expected. So I think either way, it's really important to try it out. See how the conversation goes, see exactly what kind of responses you get, and whether he is helping you with what you have asked. So if you asked Albert to create a new connection, then you go and have this conversation with him, and then at the end you can say, okay, this went okay, I was able to do it, or no, this has been complicated, right? And it didn't feel like it was easy to do. So when it comes to the situation when you feel like he hasn't given you proper answers, then you can also share that feedback with us if you want to, because we do want to make sure that Albert provides you with all the help that you need and support, and that he can retrieve the information that you need, right? And that he can really help you managing your service, right, on all areas. So transfer schedules, connections, and everything else. So that's about Albert. We'll just go to what's next. So of course, you have Albert, you can use it, you open the chat, and you can talk to him about what you actually need, and he will be able to help you and provide guidance. I think that's a huge thing. And of course, I think when it comes to troubleshooting, Albert is definitely the right one to reach out to, because he has access to our wiki, and he has the necessary knowledge to give you a reply. And of course, we do add more and more functionalities, because we do want to make Albert better. So that's like an ongoing task, I would say. We want to improve it and get to the point where Albert does an amazing job and helps you with everything. Now, what's next here? So one of the points would be building your own agent. This is something I mentioned last time when we had the AI overview. So I think this is really important, because then you will have the possibility to create your own custom agents if you want to, and then that agent can do certain things for you. The agent itself can send emails, can send reports to a specific recipient, can make changes on your integration, so can do any tasks within your service as well. So and then every agent can be equipped with skills and memory. So then you actually assign it a skill, and then this agent will be independent and will do what you need him to do. So this is, I think, really nice, and it's something that can be used, especially when you have an integration running and you want to automate. You want to automate more, right? The current process that you have. And then, of course, agent cloning. So then having like a variant of an agent that's already working. So you can also clone agents. That's something that will come next. And then give you the possibility to design, so to speak, your agents, right? If you want an agent that's specialized on troubleshooting, for example, you can set it up, and then he will deal with that part and then respond to you and give you options and try to resolve the issue for you. So I think that's really, really nice, because when you have an integration running, I think the main concern is with errors, because errors, they happen, and systems will throw errors now and then. So those need to be taken care of. So with an agent, or right now even with Albert, you can get the support that you need to actually fix that issue, and then make sure that all transfers are running correctly. And then the MCP server integration. So we have next week a session on MCP, which is really great, and will allow Albert to connect with external AI tools, right? So you can use Claude, ChatGPT, or others to connect to Rapidi and perform different actions via that. So this is really interesting, because it's really fast, and you can do a lot of things via the MCP. So you can create transfers, you can make changes, create connections instantly, modify them. So you can do so many things, and they happen within, I would say, seconds or maximum minutes. So that's really great, and we'll cover that next week when we have our session. But of course, I would say either way, it would be great to test Albert, see how he responds, how he helps you. And then if you have feedback about Albert, you can also reach out to us and let us know, so that we can continue to work on improving Albert and making sure that that he's doing a good job for all our customers, basically. So we covered this part. Now, if you have any questions, of course, you can use the chat here, but also you can reach out to us via email or via the website. We also have the support form there in case you want to talk about something. We also have the feedback form that you can use. So it's towards the end of this presentation. You can also add feedback there, or questions or ideas. So you can use that so that we can see how we can help you and how we can improve Albert, or any other areas within MyRapidi. Now, the next sessions, the next session, I would say, because this is the last one for the season. So we have the MCP server, which is next week. And that would be the last one from our full season. I hope that we provided you with enough information. If not, we'll definitely try to prepare more content, or to make it more detailed, or to focus on specific areas, right? So I think this season has been implemented so that we can see how it goes, what people think about it, and whether we need to improve our content or not, right? So it very much depends on your feedback. So that's for next week, our next session. And then here, this is the full schedule. So we went through all of them, and we only have next week, and then we are done with this part. This is feedback. So then if you want to share your feedback with us, and like I mentioned before, if you have ideas, if you think that we should cover specific content, please use this feedback form, and write there, anything that comes to your mind with regards to the sessions. If we need to cover a specific topic, you can just add feedback about it, and then we will look at it and try to prepare something so that we share it with the other customers as well. So anything that has to do with MyRapidi, with Albert, like with other functionalities, please share your feedback with us, because this will help us to improve, Rapidi overall, and also to maybe build new functionalities or features. Here we have resources. So we have documentation, we have our wiki, then we have the AI assistant. So right now we are building documentation for it. And we will be adding more and more, so then it's easy to follow and it's easy to understand how this works. Then we have support. You can reach out to support if you have any issues or if you need help with anything. So you have different channels for that. You can subscribe to our product updates. So if you want to get updates from us, then you can subscribe, and all those articles would be sent to your inbox straight away. I think we do write about interesting things, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that already. And then we have the product release notes, where we document all releases and what happened within each of them. So this is really important because we do explain exactly what we have done during that release, any new functionalities, any fixes, so everything. So it gives you a good overview of what has been done, and then you will have, I would say, a good understanding of how things are working, on that specific version, or and then it also gives you the possibility to see, new systems that we support, or new things that we have worked on. So don't forget to also check those out. And as soon as we have new releases, then we are going to add those there. And you will be able to see all releases, from like the oldest ones to the latest. So I think that was it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and please test Albert so you can see how it goes. Start having a conversation with him. You can ask him about connections, errors, everything, whatever you think it's important. And then if everything goes well, then great. Then Albert has been able to help you. If not, then please let us know so we can improve Albert and make sure that he's able to help you throughout your integration setup, or maybe your connection setup, and he doesn't become a blocker for you. So that being said, thank you again. I will see you next week when we have our session about the MCP server. Feel free to join. That will be a very interesting session. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you again. Have a lovely day and see you next week.